Hey artist friends, I'm Elle, and today I'm going to show you how I painted this 12 by 12 inch floral painting with acrylic paint. All of the supplies that I'm using for today's tutorial are listed below the video. I'm starting off my painting today by just making a quick sketch with my pastel. My canvas is a 12 by 12 inch square canvas. This is just sort of a guide. I might change things up a bit as I start painting. And then kind of have a big focal point flower in here. Maybe one coming down the side. Big one here. And something like this. Okay, that's a good start. I picked up some of these acrylic paints at Target. I like the colors. They're just craft grade paints. And I'm also going to use my Liquitex basics that you see in most of my videos. I'll list all of the colors that I use below the video. And I'm just going to start blocking in my flowers and leaves like I usually do. It's a fun palette. I'm putting this layer on fairly thin so it'll dry quickly. Just fill in your leaves and flowers. Don't worry too much because this is just the first layer. We can always make changes later. I'm going to put some of this paint in between where my flowers will be as well. If you feel like your paint is getting too dry, you can spritz it with a little bit of water. I have a space heater going in here because I don't have heat in my studio. So that is going to help my paint dry pretty quickly. I think I'm going to make this a striped vase, but for now I'm just putting down a base coat. My negative space, I'm going to use this pretty blue color. This is a Liquitex color. It's called permanent blue or light permanent blue, something like that. My face is kind of lopsided, but that's okay. And I'm going to grab some pink and just fill in these flowers. Get a flat brush here. All right, now that my canvas is mostly covered, I am going to I'm going to let this dry for a few minutes before I start adding my second layer. Okay, this layer is mostly dry, so now I'm going to add my second layer, and you'll see that the colors start to become deeper the more layers of paint that I start to add. So I'm going to go over my leaves again with this avocado green color. You can change the shape of your leaves at this point if you're not really happy with them. Kind of want this one to be swooping up a little, I think. I'm gonna add in some turquoise. I don't use a lot of golden paints, but I do love this golden brand turquoise. Just gonna wipe my brush. I'm gonna add some of this to a few of my leaves. This will also add some nice shadows between the flowers. Either under or next to some of my flowers, I like to add in shadows. I'm going to take a little bit of my dark blue, my Prussian blue. And put it between some of the leaves and flowers. Just for a little extra variation. good. And I'm gonna add a little bit of yellow also. This yellow Oxide. It's one of the Liquitex colors. Just to kind of define my leaves a little bit here. This one's kind of a mess, but we'll fix that. Oh, it's not dry. All right, I'm gonna leave my leaves alone for right now. And then I'm going to add some details now to my flowers. I'm going to use a combination of reds and I guess a deep orange and some magenta. I have this magenta from Liquitex. One of my favorite colors lately is primary red. I've got a little rose pink. And I'm going to use a little bit of this red Oxide, and I'll probably mix it with something else to lighten it up a little. And of course, my white. Okay, so I'm going to start off with my primary red. This is one of my focal point flowers, so I'm going to make it nice and bright. I'm just going to be careful right now not to pick up that blue because it's going to smudge on me if I do. So I'm going to let that dry a little before I go over that. I'm going to put in some red right here. And I think I'll do some up here just to kind of balance this out. A little here. Just kind of bring it together. I'm going to take some of that red Oxide and mix it in with my primary red. And I think I'm going to have, that's nice, some of that darker red up here. And we'll balance it over here. Anywhere that you're trying to go over the dark, like right here, I might need to add some white or pink and let it dry and then go over it again with my red. I'm going to add a little bit of this color also to my leaves. I'm going to grab a smaller brush. Maybe even a little smaller. I'm just going to put a little bit of it I like that. And a little bit down here. I think that's enough. And then my other flowers, I'm gonna add some of this pretty magenta. Didn't mean to do that. Picked up some of that blue. I might need to let this dry for a few minutes before I continue. I think this flower down here is going to be kind of a mix of red and magenta. It's too thick. And I'm going to pick up some white, I think. I want this to be a little bigger. And I have to cover that right there and let that dry. Cover that blue. Get some pure red in there. Same thing right here. I went a little overboard with the blue. I'm gonna mix some red and white, get a little pink going right here. And I think this yellow, this color that I mixed right here with the red oxide and primary red, try this out. Right up here, just to change the value of it a little. Some white for some highlights. Don't be afraid to mix your colors up good. You can make a lot of pretty colors by mixing similar ones. And I think I'm going to let this dry now, or else they're going to mix more than I want them to. Just going to add a little more magenta up here. Okay, now I'm gonna let this dry for about 5 to 10 minutes. My flowers are mostly dry at this point. I can see that this one's not, but that's okay. I'm gonna move to working on my vase for a little bit. I'm gonna make some blue and white stripes on my vase. I don't want it to be too perfect looking, so I'm kind of just putting some other color in it, just for some interest, I guess, if you want to call it that. I'm gonna try to fix the shape of it a little. I gotta go back to this morning mist that I used originally to try to reshape my vase a little bit. Prefer tubes for paint, but because I hate scooping it out of the little jar, but I just thought these colors were so cute. Alright, so one thing I'm really bad at is making my vase symmetrical. All right, good enough. So I like navy blue and grayish white striped vases. I'm gonna use my Prussian blue. And just like I added shadows here between the flowers and on some of my leaves, I'm gonna do the same thing on my vase. So I don't want my stripes to be completely solid all the way through. I want them to be a little darker, and then as you go across the vase, be a little bit lighter. So we'll go from dark blue to lighter blue, and from gray to adding a little bit of white shadows. I'm gonna use a brush, of just a flat brush here, and that's about the width of my stripes. So I'm gonna start with my blue, not too heavy on the brush, and I guess I'll start down here. So just a lighter touch as you go across. And then I'm just gonna eyeball it. I want them to be roughly the same distance apart. So darker, heavier brush stroke to a lighter brush stroke. Kind of less is more right now. We can always add more later. And then I'm gonna just wipe this a little bit, and I'm gonna mix some dark blue, a tiny bit of dark blue with this lighter blue. I'm just putting a little bit on the side that I want to appear to have a little bit more highlights. Just a very light touch. And then I'm gonna go back to my other brush that had the morning mist on it. I'm just gonna go over this gray, maybe even out my stripes a little bit before adding some white. Okay, and so to lighten up my gray stripe on this side, just adding some white, heavier touch here, and then I'll move to a lighter touch as I go along. So I have white to gray, there, and then I'm going to let that dry, and I'm going to go back in here and smooth out the edges. I think I'm going to leave my vase alone at this point. We'll see. I'm going to go back to my flowers a bit. I'm going to add some of this gray to my white flower for some highlights instead of white highlights. I'll put a little in here too. And I'll soften that magenta a bit. I like to have a lot of variation in the paint. So even though I'm just using magenta here, I like to mix it with some white, with some gray, just so it's not flat looking. I'm going to grab some more of that primary red. It's pretty translucent, so I'm going to grab a clean brush that's not wet. Because if the brush was wet or had another paint color on it, I wouldn't get the color red that I'm looking for, just because of how translucent that particular paint is. This flower is a bit too round for my liking, so that works better. And then I'm going to darken this up. And that's kind of flat, so I just want to add some color variation. I'm going to go back to this red Oxide. And there we go, I like that. I'm gonna mix in a little white. Try a little pink. I leave that, I like that for right now. I'm just picking up all the colors. I'm gonna grab some white over here. I'm gonna grab some light pink. Some light pink here. There's some highlights. Some white and pink highlights. I'm going to do a couple more pops of white, and then I'm going to start wrapping this up. I'd say we're almost done. The white. I'm gonna add just some lighter marks to my leaves. You know what, I have another color that I like. This one's called Pistachio. It's another one of those handmade modern paints. I think that'll add some nice highlights to my leaves. Maybe I overdid it, which I tend to do. So I'll layer it. And there. I like the combination of the dark and light there. And the last thing I'm going to do is just go over my light blue. Couple of pops of blue on that magenta. Makes it really pop. And I think I'm calling this one finished.